Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The morning sun cast long shadows across Terminal B at LaGuardia Airport, and if you listened carefully, as old men like me have learned to do, you could hear destiny humming in the recycled air. Ariana Taylor, 53 years of accumulated wisdom and authority, moved through the bustling terminal with the measured grace of someone who had spent 3 decades commanding courtrooms. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in that effortless way that speaks of confidence earned, not borrowed. The lines around her eyes told stories of late nights preparing cases, of victories hard won, of battles fought in boardrooms where she was often the only woman present. She wore a charcoal gray suit that fit her like liquid shadow, professional yet undeniably elegant. Her leather briefcase, soft with age and use, contained the weight of responsibility. Contracts that would reshape corporate landscapes, legal briefs that would set precedents for years to come. At 53, Ariana Taylor was not just a senior partner at Morrison, Keating and Associates. She was a force of nature disguised as a woman in business attire. But even forces of nature, my friends, can be caught off guard by the whims of fate. 26-year-old Bailey Adams rushed through that same terminal like a summer storm, all energy and barely contained chaos. Her auburn hair, still slightly damp from a hasty shower, caught the fluorescent lights as she weaved between travelers, with the desperate urgency of someone running late for a flight that could change everything. Her marketing presentation materials were scattered between a laptop bag and an overstuffed purse, and her green eyes darted anxiously toward the departure boards that seemed to mock her with their countdown to boarding. She was everything Ariana was not: young, where Ariana was mature; impulsive, where Ariana was measured; uncertain, where Ariana was assured. Bailey represented possibility incarnate, that beautiful recklessness of youth that believes every door will open, every dream will manifest, every risk will pay off. The collision happened at gate 27, Bailey, her attention focused on her phone while juggling coffee, boarding pass, and dignity, slammed directly into Ariana's solid presence. Hot coffee painted the air in a brown arc, laptop bags tangled like desperate lovers, and for one suspended moment, time seemed to pause as if the universe wanted to savor the exact instant when two destinies collided. "Oh God, oh no, I'm so sorry." Bailey's voice carried that particular pitch of mortification, reserved for moments when we're certain we've ruined someone's day beyond repair. But when their eyes met, dear listeners, this is where the story truly begins. When Bailey's emerald gaze locked with Ariana's steel blue stare, something ancient and knowing passed between them. Call it recognition, call it chemistry, call it the soul's memory of a connection that transcends this single lifetime. Ariana, who had faced down hostile judges and intimidating opposing counsel without flinching, found herself momentarily speechless. Not from anger, though her suit bore coffee stains that would cost more to clean than Bailey's entire outfit, but from something far more unsettling. The young woman before her possessed a light, a vibrancy that seemed to illuminate the sterile airport terminal like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "Please," Ariana said, her voice carrying that warm authority that had soothed countless clients and devastated numerous adversaries. "Let me help you with that." She knelt gracefully, gathering Bailey's scattered presentation materials while the younger woman stood frozen, watching those elegant hands that commanded respect in courtrooms, carefully collecting her work with genuine care. "You're heading to Philadelphia?" Ariana observed, glancing at Bailey's boarding pass. "Yes, this presentation could make or break my career, and I'm already cutting it so close, and now—" Bailey gestured helplessly at her coffee-stained blouse. Ariana stood, holding out the collected papers with a smile that transformed her entire face. Gone was the stern professional mask. In its place was something softer, more human, infinitely more dangerous to Bailey's already racing heart. "Fortunately, we're on the same flight," Ariana said, "and I happen to keep a spare blouse in my carry-on." Occupational hazard of being a lawyer one must always be prepared for unexpected ... collisions. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither quite understood yet. 35,000 feet above the earth, removed from the gravitational pull of their everyday lives, Ariana and Bailey found themselves seated side by side in first class, Ariana's frequent flyer status having secured an upgrade that fate had clearly orchestrated. Bailey had changed into Ariana's spare blouse, a silk creation that cost more than Bailey's monthly car payment and the intimate act of borrowing clothes had created an unexpected intimacy between them. The blouse fit Bailey differently than it fit Ariana. Where it spoke of power and authority on the older woman, it whispered of sensuality and youth on Bailey's smaller frame. "Tell me about this presentation that has you in such turmoil," Ariana said, settling into her seat with the fluid grace of someone equally comfortable in courtrooms and corporate jets. As Bailey spoke about her marketing campaign for sustainable technology, about her dreams of making a meaningful impact, about the weight of expectations and the fear of failure, Ariana found herself captivated not just by the younger woman's passion, but by the light that seemed to emanate from her when she spoke of things that mattered. Here was someone who still believed the world could be changed, who hadn't yet learned that compromise was often the price of progress. Bailey's idealism wasn't naive. It was fierce, determined, beautiful in its refusal to accept limitations. "You remind me of myself at your age," Ariana said quietly, then immediately regretted the comment that highlighted their age difference. But Bailey leaned closer, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper that creates instant intimacy. "Were you ever scared that you weren't enough? That everyone could see through you and realize you were just dot dot? Making it up as you went along?" Ariana's laugh was rich, warm, tinged with memories of her own younger self. "Every single day for the first 10 years of my career. The secret is that everyone is making it up as they go along. The only difference is how well you hide the improvisation." Their conversation flowed like wine intoxicating, warming, removing inhibitions layer by careful layer. They discovered shared loves, old movies that made them cry, books that had changed their perspectives, that peculiar satisfaction of perfectly prepared coffee on a rainy morning. They found themselves laughing at each other's stories, finishing each other's thoughts, creating that bubble of connection that makes the rest of the world fade into irrelevance. When turbulence shook the plane, Bailey's hand instinctively reached for Ariana's. The older woman's fingers closed around Bailey's with surprising tenderness, and neither made any move to break the contact when the rough air smoothed. "Age is just a number," Bailey whispered, her eyes fixed on their intertwined hands. "Don't you think?" Ariana felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, but opening. Like ice giving way to spring thaw. "I think," she said carefully, "that we should be careful about the numbers we choose to ignore." But her thumb was tracing gentle circles on Bailey's palm, contradicting her cautious words with every tender stroke. Philadelphia welcomed them with gray skies and cold wind that spoke of approaching winter. They shared a taxi from the airport, the comfortable silence of their flight giving way to the awkward reality of returning to their separate professional worlds. Bailey's presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock at Hartman and Associates, a prestigious firm that could launch her career into the stratosphere. Ariana's meetings were across town, dealing with a complex merger that would occupy her for the remainder of the week. "Thank you," Bailey said as they prepared to part ways. "For the blouse, for the conversation, for making what could have been a disaster into something wonderful." Ariana studied the young woman's face, memorizing the curve of her smile, the way her eyes sparkled with determination mixed with lingering vulnerability. "Give them hell in that presentation, and Bailey." She handed the younger woman her business card. "If you ever find yourself in New York, or if you need any legal advice, call me." Their goodbye was professional, appropriate, utterly inadequate for what had passed between them during those hours in the sky. But the universe, it seems, has a sense of humor about such careful separations. 3 hours later, Ariana's phone rang. Bailey's name appeared on the screen, and Ariana's heart performed acrobatics she thought she'd forgotten at 53. "Ariana, I need help, legal help. Something happened during my presentation, and I think I need a lawyer." Bailey's story unfolded in Ariana's hotel room that evening, the younger woman pacing like a caged wildcat while Ariana listened with the focused intensity of someone trained to hear the truth between the lines. Richard Hartman, the 60-year-old CEO who had requested Bailey's presentation, had made it clear that her innovative marketing campaign came with personal expectations. When Bailey had politely but firmly declined his advances, he had not only rejected her proposal, but threatened to ensure she never worked in marketing, again a threat backed by his considerable influence in the industry. He said I was naive. "To think I could succeed on talent alone," Bailey said, her voice trembling with rage and humiliation. "He said young women like me were a dime a dozen, but that I could be special if I were accommodating." Ariana felt a cold fury settle in her chest, the same righteous anger that had driven her to specialize in cases that protected the vulnerable from those who abused their power. But beneath the professional outrage was something more personal, more dangerous, the protective instinct of someone who had come to care deeply about the person being threatened. "We're going to destroy him," Ariana said with quiet certainty. "Not just legally, though, we'll do that thoroughly. We're going to expose him for what he is and ensure he can never do this to another young woman." Bailey stopped pacing, turning to face Ariana with something approaching awe. "You'd really take my case, but the conflict of interest. I mean, what happened between us on the plane?" "What happened between us," Ariana said carefully, "was two people connecting as human beings. What happens next is a lawyer protecting her client from a predator. I've spent 30 years learning how to keep those things separate." But as Bailey smiled with relief and gratitude, Ariana wondered if she was lying to both of them. Over the following days, as Ariana built Bailey's case with the methodical precision of a master craftsman, the boundaries between professional and personal became increasingly blurred. They worked late into the evenings, Bailey's hotel room becoming their war room, documents and legal briefs spurting across every surface like evidence of their growing collaboration. Ariana discovered that Bailey was not just passionate and idealistic. She was brilliantly strategic, able to see patterns and connections that even Ariana's trained eye had missed. Bailey's marketing background gave her insights into Hartman's business practices that proved invaluable in building their case. But it was during the quiet moments, when they ordered room service at midnight, when Bailey fell asleep over legal documents and Ariana covered her with a hotel blanket, when they found excuses to work closer together than strictly necessary, that the real danger emerged. "You don't have to do this," Bailey said one evening, looking up from a stack of depositions they'd spent the day reviewing. "I mean, you have your own cases, your own life. Why are you investing so much in mine?" Ariana set down her coffee, considering her words carefully. The truthful answer that she cared about Bailey in ways that had nothing to do with legal ethics and everything to do with the way her heart raced when the younger woman smiled was not one she could voice. "Because you deserve justice," she said instead. "Because men like Hartman count on women like you to be intimidated into silence. Because someone needs to stand up to him, and I happen to be very good at standing up to bullies." Bailey was quiet for a long moment, studying Ariana's face with those perceptive green eyes. "Is that the only reason?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge, like an invitation, like a precipice they both knew they were approaching, but neither dared acknowledge. "Bailey double quotes," Ariana began, then stopped. What could she say? That at 53, she had rediscovered what it felt like to be truly alive? That Bailey's presence had awakened parts of herself she'd thought were permanently buried under decades of professional armor? That every conversation, every shared laugh, every accidental touch was pulling her towards something that could destroy everything she'd built? "I know," Bailey said softly. "I feel it too." The threatening message arrived on Bailey's phone at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, jolting both women from the sleep they'd finally managed to find. Drop the case or face the consequences. Some fights aren't worth winning. Attached was a photograph of Bailey entering Ariana's hotel, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens that suggested serious surveillance equipment and malicious intent. "We're calling the police," Ariana said immediately, her lawyer's instincts overriding everything else. "And you're not going anywhere alone until we figure out who's behind this." But Bailey was studying the photograph with a marketing professional's eye for detail. "Look at the angle," she said. "Look at the timestamp. Whoever took this has been watching for days. They know our schedules, our routines. This isn't random intimidation. This is targeted, professional." Ariana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hotel's aggressive air conditioning. In 30 years of practicing law, she'd faced her share of threats and intimidation tactics. But this felt different, more personal, more dangerous. "Hartman has the resources to hire this kind of surveillance," she said grimly. "But he's not stupid enough to be directly involved. He'll have used intermediaries, people who can't be traced back to him." Bailey moved to the window, peering through the curtains at the street below. "So what do we do? Give up? Let him win?" Ariana joined her at the window, standing close enough to feel the warmth radiating from Bailey's body. "We fight smarter. We move the case to New York, where I have home field advantage. We accelerate our timeline and file before they can escalate their threats. And us?" Bailey asked quietly, not looking away from the window. What do we do? About us? It was the question Ariana had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Standing there in the dim light filtering through hotel curtains, with danger lurking in the shadows and their professional lives hanging in the balance, she finally allowed herself to acknowledge what had been growing between them since that first collision at the airport. I don't know, Ariana admitted. I've never been in this situation before. I've never double quotes. Never what? Never felt like this about a client. Never compromised my professional judgment for personal feelings. Never been willing to risk everything I've built for someone I met 5 days ago. Bailey turned from the window, her face serious in the partial darkness. Maybe some risks are worth taking. Maybe some connections are bigger than timing or circumstances or professional ethics. She moved closer, close enough that Ariana could see the flecks of gold in her. Green eyes could smell the subtle perfume that had been driving her to distraction for days. Age is just a number, Bailey whispered, echoing her words from the airplane. Don't you think? This time, Ariana didn't argue. The kiss was everything Ariana had imagined and nothing she could have prepared for. Bailey tasted like possibility and rebellion, like coffee and courage, and the particular sweetness of someone who still believed in happy endings. When they broke apart, both women were breathing hard, the weight of what they just acknowledged settling around them like gravity. This complicates everything, Ariana said, though she made no move to step away. Good, Bailey replied fiercely. I'm tired of uncomplicated. Uncomplicated is boring. Uncomplicated doesn't change anything. They spent that night talking, not touching, though the temptation was a living thing in the room between them, but laying out the full scope of what they were considering. The professional risks were substantial. Ariana could face ethics violations that would threaten her license to practice law. The personal risks were even greater, the age difference that would invite scrutiny and judgment, the different stages of their lives, the public attention that would inevitably follow if their relationship became known. But as dawnlight crept through the hotel curtains as they sat facing each other across the wreckage of legal documents and empty coffee cups, both women recognized something that transcended risk assessment and professional calculation. They recognized love, not the desperate, consuming passion of youth, nor the comfortable companionship of long marriage, but something rarer, the deep recognition of souls that complement each other perfectly, that bring out the best in each other, that create something greater together than either could achieve alone. We filed the case today, Ariana said as morning light transformed the room around them. We fight Hartman with everything we have. And when it's over, double quotes, when it's over. When it's over, we figure out what comes next, together. Bailey smiled, the expression transforming her face with pure radiance. Together sounds perfect. The legal battle that followed was fierce, public, and ultimately transformative. Ariana had been right about having home field advantage in New York. Within her familiar network of contacts and established relationships, she was able to build an airtight case that exposed not just Hartman's harassment of Bailey, but a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 2 decades. Bailey proved to be not just a victim seeking justice, but a formidable partner in building the case. Her marketing background had given her skills in research and presentation that complemented Ariana's legal expertise perfectly. They worked as a team with an efficiency and intuitive understanding that amazed Ariana's colleagues and terrified Hartman's defense team. The threats continued, escalating from anonymous messages to suspicious vehicles outside Ariana's apartment building, to break-in attempts that were interrupted by alert neighbors. But instead of intimidating them into silence, each threat only strengthened their resolve to see the case through to its conclusion. He's getting desperate, Ariana observed one evening as they reviewed security footage from yet another attempted break-in. Desperate men make mistakes. And when he makes his mistake, we'll be ready. The mistake came in the form of a private investigator who had been hired to gather compromising information about both women. When the investigator was arrested, attempting to plant listening devices in Bailey's apartment, the trail of evidence led directly back to Hartman's inner circle. The case that had begun as a harassment complaint became a federal investigation involving witness intimidation, invasion of privacy, and conspiracy charges that would ultimately send 3 people to prison and end Hartman's career in complete disgrace. But for Ariana and Bailey, the real victory was not legal but personal. The courtroom was packed on the day of the final hearing. Media attention had made the case a symbol of the broader fight against workplace harassment, and Bailey had become an unlikely spokesperson for victims who refused to be silenced. As Judge Morrison read the verdict, complete vindication for Bailey, substantial damages that would ensure she never had to worry about financial security again, and criminal referrals that would keep Hartman and his associates occupied with legal troubles for years to come, Ariana felt the particular satisfaction that comes from justice served. But her eyes were not on the judge or the defeated defense team. They were on Bailey, who sat beside her with tears of relief and vindication streaming down her face. When the gavel fell and the courtroom erupted in applause, Bailey turned to Ariana with a smile that could have powered the city. "We did it," Bailey whispered. "You did it," Ariana corrected. "You had the courage to fight back. You had the strength to see it through. You changed everything." The celebration afterwards was subdued, both women exhausted by months of intense legal preparation and public scrutiny. But when they finally found themselves alone in Ariana's apartment, Bailey's lease had expired during the case, and staying together had become both practical and increasingly natural, the weight of what they had accomplished, both professionally and personally, settled around them. "So what happens now?" Bailey asked, curled against Ariana on the couch where they had spent countless evenings preparing for depositions and court appearances. Ariana considered the question seriously. At 53, she had achieved everything she had ever dreamed of professionally. Her reputation was secure, her financial future assured, her legacy as a champion of justice established. For the first time in 3 decades, she had the luxury of choosing what came next, based on what she wanted rather than what she needed. "Now," she said, pressing a kiss to Bailey's temple, "we build something new together." 1 year later, the brass nameplate outside the downtown office read, "Taylor and Adams Legal Advocacy" in elegant script. The practice they had built together combined Ariana's legal expertise with Bailey's marketing and public relations skills, creating a firm that specialized in cases that others considered too risky or too complicated to pursue. They had learned to navigate the professional challenges of their relationship with the same strategic thinking that had won Bailey's case. Clear boundaries during working hours, separate roles that utilized their individual strengths, and a shared commitment to justice that transcended personal considerations. The personal relationship had evolved too, growing from the intense attraction and emotional connection of those first weeks into something deeper and more sustainable. They had learned to bridge the gap between their different generational perspectives, to balance Bailey's impulsive energy with Oriana's measured wisdom, to create a partnership that honored both their individual identities and their shared dreams. The age difference that had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle had become simply another aspect of their unique dynamic. Bailey kept Ariana connected to contemporary culture and technology. Ariana provided Bailey with the confidence and perspective that came from decades of experience. "Age is just a number," Bailey had whispered on their first flight together, and time had proven her right. What mattered was not the years between them, but the dreams they shared. The values that aligned, the love that had grown stronger through every challenge they had faced together. On quiet evenings, when the last client had been served and the final brief had been filed, they would sit together in their shared home, a compromise between Ariana's established elegance and Bailey's vibrant creativity, and marvel at the journey that had brought them together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't collided that morning?" Bailey asked one such evening, her head resting on Ariana's shoulder as they watched the sun set over the city skyline. Ariana smiled, remembering that frantic morning at LaGuardia that now seemed like a lifetime ago. "I think we would have found each other eventually," she said with the certainty of someone who had come to believe in the mysterious forces that guide human connection. "Some meetings are inevitable. Some love stories are written in the stars, long before the characters arrive to play their parts. You're getting poetic in your old age," Bailey teased. "I'm getting wise in my old age," Ariana corrected. "There's a difference." But as they sat together in the fading light, both women understood that their story was far from over. They had learned that love recognizes no boundaries, not age, not convention, not the careful calculations of risk and reward that govern most human decisions. They had learned that sometimes the most unexpected collisions create the most beautiful destinations. And they had learned that when two souls recognize each other across all the noise and distraction of modern life, no force on earth is strong enough to keep them apart. The future stretched ahead of them, full of cases to win, causes to champion, and love to nurture. Together, they would continue to prove that age truly is just a number, that professional boundaries can be navigated with wisdom and integrity, and that the heart knows truths that the mind takes years to understand. But, my dear souls, there is more to this story than the triumph of love over circumstance. For you see, as I have watched these two women build their life together, I have come to understand something profound about the nature of human connection that transcends the simple narrative of romance. 3 years into their partnership, both personal and professional Bailey discovered something that would test the very foundations of everything they had built together. It came in the form of a manila envelope delivered to their office on a Tuesday morning when the autumn light was painting their windows gold. Inside were documents that Ariana's private investigator had uncovered during their original case against Hartman. Documents that revealed Bailey's mother, a woman who had died when Bailey was barely 16, had once worked as a paralegal for Morrison, Keating and Associates, had in fact worked directly under Ariana's supervision during the early years of Ariana's career. Did you know? Bailey asked that evening, her voice carrying a tremor that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with the vertigo of discovering that fate runs even deeper than we dare imagine. Ariana studied the photograph of a young woman who bore Bailey's eyes and smile, standing in the background of an office party from 1998. Sarah Adams, brilliant, dedicated, full of dreams for her young daughter's future. Sarah Adams, who had died in a car accident while working late on a case that Ariana had assigned her. No, Ariana whispered, her voice breaking with the weight of memory and guilt. But I remember her now. I remember your mother, Bailey. She was ... She was extraordinary. The silence that followed was not empty, but full heavy with the weight of connections that span decades, with the mystery of how the universe weaves its patterns across time, with the profound question of whether their love was destiny or simply the complicated mathematics of unresolved grief. She used to talk about you, Bailey said finally, tears streaming down her face. About the senior associate who was going to change everything for women in law. About how much she learned from watching you work. She died driving home from the office at midnight because she wanted to finish a brief that you needed for the next morning. Ariana felt something crumble inside her chest. The weight of responsibility she had carried for every junior associate, every late night, every demand for perfection that had shaped her career, it all crystallized around the memory of Sarah Adams, who had been trying so hard to prove herself worthy of the opportunities Ariana represented. I'm so sorry, Ariana breathed. Bailey, I'm so sorry. If I had insisted she go home earlier, if I had been more careful about the pressure I put on my team. But Bailey crossed the room then, taking Ariana's face in her hands with a tenderness that spoke of understanding rather than accusation. Don't you see? This isn't about guilt or blame or cosmic punishment. This is about completion. This is about the circle closing in the most beautiful way possible. She pressed her forehead against Ariana's, their tears mingling in the space between them. My mother died believing that women like you would change the world for women like me. And look what we've built together. Look at the cases we've won, the women we've helped, the precedents we've set. She didn't die for nothing, Ariana. She died planting seeds that we're still harvesting. The months that followed brought a new depth to their relationship as they worked together to understand the implications of this revelation. They visited Sarah Adams' grave together, Ariana finally able to apologize to a woman who had been more than just another employee, Bailey. Finally able to introduce the mother she had lost to the woman who had become her everything. I think she would have liked you, Bailey said, kneeling beside the simple headstone in the cemetery, where autumn leaves gathered like memories around the monuments to love and loss. I think she would have been proud of what you've become. Ariana replied, placing flowers that would serve as offerings to both the past and the future. But the real healing came in their work. Together, they established the Sarah Adams Memorial Fund, providing legal aid and career support for young women entering the legal profession. They created mentorship programs that ensured no junior associate would ever again feel the crushing pressure to sacrifice their safety for their career advancement. Every case they took became, in some small way, a tribute to Bailey's mother, and to all the women who had paved difficult paths so that future generations could walk more easily. Their love story had become something larger than romance. It had become a legacy, a living testament to the idea that personal healing and social justice were not separate endeavors, but two faces of the same sacred work. Do you think she somehow arranged for us to meet? Bailey asked one evening as they worked late in their office, surrounded by case files and legal briefs that would help other women find their voices. Ariana looked up from her computer, studying the woman who had transformed not just her heart, but her entire understanding of what it meant to live a meaningful life. At 56 now, she moved with the grace of someone who had found her true purpose. The silver in her hair had spread, but it only served to highlight the warmth in her eyes, the contentment that radiated from her like sunlight.